Welcome to APMG Midday Mentors today. I'm delighted to be speaking to Baziel Barends. Baz, can you give us a little bit of insight as to how we got here and who you are, a little bit of background, please?
Great, Estelle. Thanks so much for having me. It's a great privilege to be on your show. And always enjoy talking about BRM. It's something that, it's been a long part of my life. And where I am at the moment, I've started a consultancy focused on sustainable transformation, and that's digital transformation and business transformation. But what led me to here is I've been in a large organization, a fashion retailer in South Africa called the Foschini Group. And about 15 years ago, the CIO of the Foschini Group felt that the relationship between IT and business needed to be optimized, and started a function called, we called it CRM at that stage, Customer Relationship Management. And I think it was quite, it was well in advance of, formal organizations being established in the space. But we found that the CRMs initially, multiple business divisions were wondering, what are these customer relationship managers doing? But soon they started to prove their value, where the previous MD of the IT division felt that any IT division, if they even just met a reasonable standard of success for their projects, would be world class, because we all know that IT is a tricky business, and it's hard to get right. And on the other end of the user spectrum is a user who sometimes doesn't quite know what's changing in the environment, and when there's an error that pops up on the screen, can be very frustrating. And I use that simple example to illustrate what the CRMs back in those days used to do. They used to help business users become comfortable with the changes that IT was introducing into the environment. At that stage, I was in leadership, looking at operations teams, and then went into merchandise and logistics and manufacturing systems. I eventually became the executive in charge of those areas, and the CRM capability evolved to what was then called a BRM. So we then started calling it the Business Relationship Management capability, and that was around 10 years ago. And what we then saw was that we started to elevate the importance of the business relationship managers, because the Foschini Group had more than 10 divisions at that time, big divisions, the largest jewelers in South Africa, some of the largest sporting divisions, ladies fashion, men fashion. And the managing directors of each of those firms wanted to get optimal use out of their IT systems. So what they started to do is engage with us as executives to try and understand how they could move forward with their IT systems in a coherent way across multiple divisions. And that's where the BRM really started to become quite critical.
Am I right in thinking that you also worked with some UK corporates as well?
Yes, that came later on. So what then happened was, around about 2014, 2015, the group started to acquire divisions internationally. And one of the first divisions that was acquired was Phase 8. And I was part of the IT team, a part of the evaluation team that was doing due diligence. And my role was to look at the IT viability of Phase 8. And what we found at that stage is, I think with the international presence, the relationships became even more complex in the group. The BRMs didn't deal too heavily with the international groups, but we found that there were a number of things that we needed to help with. And what we found as well is that if we were dealing with IT capability for the South African chains, we needed to consider what the requirement would be from an international perspective as well. So, the Foschini Group acquired a number of divisions internationally. So Phase 8, there was Whistles, Hobbs, Damsel in a Dress. So it's become a multinational group. And that has made the relationships even more complex to deal with, in terms of the, just the number of stakeholders to manage and the number of projects to deal with. So what we found is that as we were acquiring, for instance, branches or setting up chains internationally, like in Australia, the BRM needed to deal with, call it the head of the jewelry division, to try and understand how does this get incorporated into the existing systems? How does the logistics get dealt with? And does the head of logistics understand all of this? And maybe there's a key stakeholder in, in procurement that we haven't dealt with. And so the BRM was critical to a lot of these interactions. And what we found over the years is that the BRM capability started evolving from an order taker type role to very much a strategic partnering type role. And I was very fortunate in my last few years at the Foschini Group to head up the BRM capability. And so that brought another dimension. I've been seeing the BRM role on the other side. I was the executive providing the service to the divisions, and the BRM was coming to me saying, we've got these 10 things that the customer needs, and can you give them all? And I'd say, can you prioritize? And I'd produce a list of things that we could do.
Could you give some examples of the kind of things that people would be asked to do in the role?
Yes, so it would range. The BRMs very often would be order takers. So because the group has got so many divisions, they've got 29 divisions now, wow, globally, and over 3,000 stores internationally and in South Africa. So there'd be a lot of order taking involved. So it would be something to the effect of, 5 of my stores have gone down in critical areas, and can you please find out, I'm trying to get hold of somebody in the support area or one of the executives on the IT side, but we are unable to get hold of anyone. Please just sort that out immediately. And it could be at that level, but it could also be just a person whose PC had gone down, and on the day they needed to produce a report for the managing director. And they were stressing about it, and they didn't know where to turn, and they needed to get it done urgently. So they'd asked the BRM. So the BRM would be called in for a number of those type of scenarios. But what we realized is that the BRM could add so much more value. And that value was at the partnering level, at the strategic level. And what was wonderful is that around about 2016, 2017, the Institute, we started becoming aware of the Institute, of the BRM Institute. And we started working with some of the BRM Institute's material. We met somebody that was based in South Africa called Gary Hardy from an organization called IT Winners. And, Gary worked very hard at establishing a relationship with the Foschini Group and the BRM team. And Mark Morley, who works with him in IT Winners. So we became aware of this material, which was very useful for us. We got our BRM started doing certifications. So there's the basic certification, which is the BRMP. We had somebody that did the CBRM as well. And what we found was that we could start using the material of the BRM Institute to structure our interactions more. What we started realizing is that the relationships with the various divisions were, while they were in this order taking mode, we could also work towards a strategic way of engaging. And, we saw the Institute's material, strategic relationship management, which was, building a relationship with each division strategically. And one of the members who had done a BRMP at that stage, I worked with her to develop an engagement model for the group. So we had to redo the engagement model because we wanted to structure the way that we interacted with the divisions. So things like strategic relationship management was looking at working with the managing directors of the respective divisions and understanding what their needs were, we realized that we'd been in a world where, you know, we were implementing IT systems, and we were looking at what we thought was good for the business. But very often, you know, we weren't necessarily hearing the business needs very carefully. And I think that was a space where the BRMs really started stepping into. I think they'd been there right from the beginning. And there'd been times when they were incredibly strategic, where, you know, the managing directors of the various chains looked to the BRM to help them develop their business strategies, with IT being inculcated or you know, just baked into the business strategy. But what we were looking at doing was doing that at a group level.
So do you find that the BRM Institute, which has the online membership, do you find that the people that you're working with, Baz, refer to that a lot and get a lot from their peers?
Absolutely. Thanks for that question, Estelle. We found the material of the Institute to be extremely useful. What it does is it forms a base with us to work with. So there's material from what is called the BRMP, which is the Business Relationship Management Professional, and then the CBRM, which is a Certified Business Relationship Manager. And then there's also the BRM Body of Knowledge, or the BRM BOK. So, you know, over the years, we took our standards and certifications quite seriously. So there'd be the Project Management Body of Knowledge, or the PM BOK. There'd be the BA Body of Knowledge and the BA BOK. There'd be print certifications. So we always looked for credible sources of information, and the BRM BOK was also a very credible source of information for us. So we found that instead of, you know, trying to find all these answers and work it out ourselves, there was this body of knowledge of companies, you know, thousands of BRMs across the world. Their experience had been baked into this body of knowledge. So we used that extensively. And I must say, in my personal capacity, after having left the Foschini Group, I've continued my subscription to the Institute because of the networking, the connections, and the information that I can get in the community. There's also a big community. There's an online community that one can be part of. So I've found that you know, staying in touch with the Institute and you know, looking at their information, using the information, has been a great springboard to using this info to becoming effective in that space. And I think the important thing is that it's not a one-size-fits-all. That's one thing that we did find out when we developed this engagement model over the last few years, is that some of the information the business units weren't necessarily ready for, or even the IT executives. We needed to tailor-make the information that we found on the Institute's various knowledge sources. We had to tailor-make it to work in the organization. But if we didn't have that information, it would have been quite a difficult task, I think. So for me and for the BRM team, it's been worthwhile. And I know the Foschini Group has continued their allegiance to the BRM Institute. And that's also, you know, a reason for us now in my role recently. I've been part of the team that started the BRM Institute chapter for South Africa, because we see the value of BRM. I saw it in TFG, and I've been working closely with members of the Institute, and I can see where this could add value beyond an organization. It can add value at a broader societal level. And I think there are tremendous opportunities there that businesses and individuals can harness.
Can I pick you up on the individuals, Baz? Before we move on to the chapter, which I'm really looking forward to hearing about, but could you give me an idea of the kind of individual that you think suits the BRM role? Do you have to be a particular type of person? What sort of roles will move into a BRM role, do you think?
It's an interesting question, Estelle. Thanks for that. And I've watched the BRMs over 15 years, first as a provider, and then as the head of the team, where I interviewed many people for the BRM role. What was interesting, the first BRMs actually came from the members of the senior members of the IT team. So almost at executive level, going across to be liaison with the business. And what we found is that the senior people actually did very well in the BRM role. We'd find that senior people, when they went into the BRM role, they'd learn a new focus, whereas before the focus would be on the technology, the functional elements, the finance. As soon as they went through this BRM role, and we typically saw the BRMs going for a few years before they needed some kind of change into a different BRM portfolio or different area of the business, but the experience that they gained in that BRM role was tremendous. And we've actually seen over the years that the people that went through the BRM role typically went on to even more senior roles, and quite a few members of the executive team and the managing director are ex-BRMs. So I think the relationship elements that you learn in that is a great springboard for future roles. That's the first thing. The types of roles that have been very successful, we found that BAs have been very natural fits into the BRM role, and it could be because of the problem-solving capability that's so important in that role. And BAs also need to have strong relationships and very good listening skills and empathy to be successful as BAs. So we found BAs to be very strong BRMs. Executives have been very strong. Senior people also, in those executive roles, have needed those same kind of skills. And we've seen, it could be any other type of role. So we've seen a lot of project managers, HR personnel have come through, and at the end of the day, it does depend on the person. And what we tried at the Foschini Group was to also bring people through the ranks, junior people that showed an interest in relationship management, and that also worked. And those junior people have grown significantly and have become members of middle to senior management and executives in many cases. So yeah, it's an important consideration when looking at that as a career. I found that those people who chose BRM as a career have been very glad that they've done that because of the opportunities that it unlocked for them going forward.
Brilliant, thank you. So the South Africa chapter, this is how we got to meet one another. I think Mark Morley from IT Winners introduced us, and I'm very grateful to him for that introduction. You've been working very hard on a video with them as part of the South Africa chapter. I don't know which question to ask first, Baz, but can you tell me a little bit about the video, the history, the making, and why, please?
Sure. So the chapter came first. Just in terms of what the thinking was, Gary and Mark run IT Winners in South Africa. They've had extensive engagements with the Institute over the years, and they do training, the BRMP, CBRM, and also interaction with organizations like the Foschini Group. And after I left the group, I'd finished an executive MBA at the University of Cape Town, and I then started my own business. And one of the things that I did was I renewed my relationship with Gary and Mark based on my interaction with them at the Foschini Group. And Gary, being very passionate, and Mark about BRM, felt that there were a number of BRMs in South Africa. So like the Foschini Group, there were a number of big companies in South Africa that had BRMs in it. We found that some companies, typically don't see the value of BRMs. And in the Foschini Group, we'd been doing for 15 years, and we saw tremendous value there. And likewise, there were some companies that had seen the value. And what we wanted to do was grow the capability of BRM in South Africa. So help those companies that hadn't seen what value BRM can unlock, help those companies to do that. And I think importantly, it's not just about the companies. As I said, I've kept my membership as a, I'm not in corporate anymore, but I've kept my membership from a personal perspective. I think, as a career, as in BRM, it is something that we do want to encourage people to join the chapter. And that was part of the thinking behind the chapter, is to grow the organizational, but also the personal growth for people that wanted to be in the BRM space. And Gary was really passionate about this. And we were very fortunate because Gary has worked so closely with the Institute. They gave the South African chapter the permission to be the first chapter beyond the Institute, which is based in the USA. So we've just started that recently, and we wanted to get quite active out there and start doing conferences and going to companies and getting people involved. And then unfortunately, we all know what happened a few months ago. We all got locked down, and we still wanted to carry on with this message. And we thought to ourselves, how do we keep some kind of awareness, or just keep ourselves busy in the lockdown period while COVID is raging? And we came up with this idea to do this video of BRM. And I'd been involved with the Institute for just over the past year on a team working on a concept called relationshipism. And with my nephew, we developed a video for this concept of relationshipism. And it felt like the right thing to look at developing something that was specific for South Africa. So we decided to do this video between Gary, Mark, and myself to say, what is BRM, and what can it mean to you? So very interestingly, we really struggled because we need to put a script together of what is BRM. And I know, coming from a hardcore, hard as nails IT executive team, we didn't have time for soft and fuzzy stuff. It was about the hard stuff. Yes, we saw the value of BRM, but we really valued the hard functional and delivery elements. So to be able to put that into a 1-minute clip, we went through all of our material. We had PowerPoint presentations that we presented to CEOs, C-level suite, across the board, and we just found it incredibly hard to put it into a few words. If you had to say,
I can imagine.
So we went to and fro. It was tricky. We went to and fro for a few weeks, looking at the script, to the point where we said, actually, it's not something. Let's rather do a video with text in it where we can actually explain it to everyone and have lots of words so people can read it. But then we thought, let's really take a stab at it and really apply ourselves. And what we looked at was some of the elements that were coming through in relationshipism, which is that there is an individual purpose for each of us, and there is purpose for organizations. And we're seeing more and more the literature, and this is what my research project was in my MBA as well, was that emancipatory leadership and purpose-led journeys for individuals and organizations are becoming incredibly important. And if you look anywhere, even in the mainstream journals, if you look at Harvard Business Review, if you look at McKinsey, you will see that CEOs globally are looking at what is the purpose of my organization, and then in that, what is the purpose of each person, and is my organization allowing each person to fulfill their purpose and live their purpose and be intrinsically motivated. And so those were the elements that we kept coming back to, and we found that without having to put down in words exactly what BRM is, we could say we managed to encapsulate some of those thoughts in the video, and we were quite pleased at the end result. We actually had the president of the chapter to do the voiceover, because this was done without any funding. So we all had to donate our time and our energy, and we somehow managed to get the president's voice, sounding like it was in studio, and we got the script finalized, and my nephew, who's based in South Korea and runs a film company, donated his time, and that was it. And I think the great thing there is that it feels like we've encapsulated some of the essence of BRM and some of the where BRM is going to, and relationshipism and the triple bottom line of people, purpose, and planet.
So I think the video is called the Stronger Together video, Baz. And as mentioned, we will share the link at the end of this. So with regards to the chapter, how are you moving that forward? What's next for the South Africa chapter of the Business Relationship Management Institute? What will you be doing with it? And how will you be coping with events and relationships, etc., going forward during this time and beyond?
Thanks, Estelle. Yes, it is an interesting time for us. We feel we can still move forward. As a board, we have started meeting regularly, and our focus for the first year is just to start getting members on board. Members to come on board to the South African chapter and be members of the BRM Institute at the same time. We feel that people from an individual perspective and from a corporate perspective will get a lot of value being members of the chapter, the South African chapter, and it comes with all the benefits of being part of the BRM Institute internationally as well. One of the things that we're looking to do in the next 2 to 3 months is to have an online day where we will get speakers to come on board, speakers that have a track record in BRM and can talk to their experience of being BRMs, of how they grew up in the BRM role, and what it means to strategically partner with business in the BRM role, and some of the nuances about being a BRM. So we're looking to do an event of that sort. So the focus then is on membership, new event, and that will be our focus over the next few months. To be a member of the chapter, there won't be a chapter membership fee initially. It will just be a BRM Institute membership fee. So we're waiving that for the first year to encourage people to come on board to be members of the South African chapter. And being part of the chapter also means that you're part of the community, and that we can start growing a body of knowledge for South African purposes, what is specific to South Africa in the BRM space, and look at growing that capability in South Africa. And we're hoping to see a lot more companies coming on board. We also have one of my roles as well is academic relations, which we're starting to look at how do we bring the universities on board, going to the campuses and looking at how do we get students who are looking at their career and think about BRM as an interesting career, and something that they can head towards, be part of the community and actually become BRMs. And maybe it's a stepping stone to managing director or C-level position. But the academic institute side is something that we feel there could be good synergies with the academic institution. So we'll be knocking in their doors, and we'll be aligning with the institute as well in this space. So there are quite a few thrusts for the first year, and it's just about finding our feet, getting interest going. And if anybody's interested, they're welcome to contact me, and they are welcome to come to the BRM Institute South African chapter. They can just Google us and just inquire and join the chapter. You don't need to be in South Africa. I've had members just in the last week from Nigeria, who've made contact with me. I've seen the video, I've seen some of the information about the chapter, are interested, and interested in growing the capability in Africa. And so, feel free, even if you're not in South Africa, to be part of the chapter community, and grow with us. And I think in time, there are other countries that are looking to establish chapters as well. And I think the Institute is also looking at the South African chapter. If this model succeeds, we may see other countries coming on board in Africa or elsewhere across the world to grow the BRM capability globally.
I have no doubt that will happen, Baz. And before we bid you farewell, I just want to say an enormous thank you, but leave you on the outro, if I may, just telling us a little bit about your storytelling for BRM Connect before we say goodbye.
Great, thanks, Estelle. The storytelling side is, just being part of the journey dealing with the Institute. I've now been part of a team called the Relationshipism team over the last year. And also, the Relationshipism concept is one where we look at putting people at the center of business as opposed to profits. So it's a new triple bottom line of PPP, which is people, purpose, and planet. And the purpose side is one of those things that is an important journey for me, because 10 years ago, I said to myself, I'm going to find the work that I was destined to do. I was in a great organization, but I'd been there for 20 years, and I wanted to, find work that was meaningful for me, going forward. And the BRM side was one of those elements, but I actually consulted a purpose coach in 2016, and I worked with her for the last few years, and did all kinds of exercises, finding my why, what is my purpose in the workplace. And that's what led me to do an executive MBA and a research project, a dissertation on power as an executive in the workplace, and researched a emerging emancipatory leadership paradigm called leadership as practice, which is about empowering all of us as leaders on a team. It's not about the traditional heroic leader. It's about all of us having leadership capability in the teams. And I'd seen that when I was busy setting up the agile teams in the Foschini Group. That agile succeeded not because of the hierarchical pressures, but because of each person working in a purposeful and meaningful way as part of the team. So, I developed a power model around how do you transition from high power hierarchical mechanisms to more sustainable ways of leadership and of organizational viability. And I'm quite privileged at the moment to have been asked by the university to be a coach for their executives on organizational viability, which is what I'm currently doing, looking at how the elements of hierarchy can be transitioned to elements which are more agile, and looking at how do you measure that organizational viability. So my story that I'm telling is about this journey of purpose, and it's called the risky business of distributed power, because I've seen that as we've tried to reduce the very asymmetrical, hierarchical, you have to thump the desk to get things done kind of model, as we've changed that over the years, there's always the risk that you lose control. And how does one do that? What are the risks, and how do you mitigate those risks when you're transitioning from high power to empowered? And that's the story that I'll be telling as part of the BRM Connect, the global conference towards the end of next month.
Well, we'll very much look forward to that. Baz, thank you very, very much indeed for your insight, your time, your wisdom, and for all your energy, and for sharing with us about your purpose and relationshipism. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Estelle. Thanks very much for having me.